MG's entry-level SUV, the ZS, makes a much more credible statement in this second generation form, especially when equipped with frugal full hybrid power. Do you really need a pricier small crossover than this? One thing that might surprise you about this front-mounted drivetrain is just how powerful it is. That electric motor develops 134 brake horsepower, and in combination with the 101 brake horsepower 1.5 litre 4-cylinder petrol engine it's paired with, means this ZS Hybrid Plus has a rather considerable 194 brake horsepower to play with. To put that into perspective, mainstream versions of the much pricier Toyota Yaris Cross Hybrid have just 114 brake horsepower. Small wonder that this MG is so much quicker than its Japanese rival, making 62 miles an hour in just 8.7 seconds, 2.5 seconds quicker than that Yaris, on the way to 104 miles an hour. Though from behind the wheel, the perceived difference in performance between the two cars isn't quite as great as that increment might suggest. To replicate that quoted acceleration stat, you will of course have had to engage the most eager of the three provided drive modes, Sport. The other two are Normal and Eco, by which time the green EV light on the instrument display will long ago have been replicated by an HEV icon, indicating that the engine is in play. That combustion unit integrates itself quite smoothly, unless you press the throttle into its final third of travel, at which point this MG feels right out of its comfort zone, its drivetrain mooing like a heifer in heat. But you won't suffer this refinement affliction unless you drive the car in the kind of manner a typical owner never would, and you quickly learn to work around it. The base SE petrol version of this ZS still uses one of the oldest and most inefficient engines it's possible to buy, so the sophistication of the power plant in this Hybrid Plus model is something of a pleasant shock. That little battery can't actually take the car more than around half a mile without troubling the engine, but that's not really the point of a proper hybrid. Instead, the idea is that the electric motor should frequently cut in around town to aid efficiency, and in this MG it does that so often that you sometimes feel as if you're driving an EV. At these lower speeds, the powertrain always defaults to a full EV setting. Then, when the battery is depleted, it switches to a series mode that sees the petrol engine quietly wake up to power a generator that tops up the battery with electricity. Surprisingly, given the larger battery in play here, there's no EV button like you get in a Yaris Cross to force a battery-driven drive setting around town. But unlike with most other small hybrids, you can select from 3 levels of brake regeneration to keep the lithium-ion cells topped up. The fiercest of these, High, slows the car off throttle quite noticeably. Get beyond the city limits and the powertrain automatically switches to a parallel hybrid setting, which is where for the first time the petrol engine sends its power direct to the wheels, in combination with the electric motor via an auto gearbox. That auto, rather curiously, has only 3 speeds. MG says that makes it more reactive. The original ZS had very much a bargain basement look that increasingly didn't fit with the kind of company that these days makes forward-thinking designs like the Cyberster and the MG4. This second generation ZS is a much more satisfying looking thing, borrowing cues from second generation versions of the MG3 Super Mini and the larger HS SUV. It's a B-segment SUV, but quite a large one, measuring in at 4,430 millimetres, which is a full 107 millimetres longer than the previous generation model. At the front, the LED headlights smear around the chamfered corners of the car and sit well above this deep, distinctive front grille that's flanked by narrow boomerang-shaped intake panels on either side. At the rear, where a previous owner might notice the lower roofline, this ZS is 18mm shorter than its predecessor. MG has resisted the current trend for full-width light bars, but these tail lamps have full LED illumination. What you'll probably really want to know, though, is whether this second generation ZS is now more Waitrose than Aldi inside. So let's take a look. Well, It's a big improvement over the old car for sure, with splashes of silverwork, 4 stylised trapezoidal vents, an Art Deco aircraft style gear selector, brushed effect door card inlays, sporty red trimmed mats and a squared off steering wheel. Despite all this worthy effort, if we're honest, most obvious rivals still feel just that bit nicer in terms of cabin ambience, but you could now switch into a ZS from one of them without feeling miserly. The rejuvenated ambience is obviously helped a great deal by the big step forward in cabin screen tech, which MG has embraced wholeheartedly. Perhaps too wholeheartedly, you might think, if you don't happen to like the arcade video game style graphics of the new 7-inch digital instrument cluster. To suit the modern trend, this central infotainment monitor has grown to 12.3 inches in size and features plenty. Standard built-in navigation, a reversing camera and App Connect, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto connectivity, though that smartphone mirroring unfortunately remains wired rather than wireless. As usual, the home screen is split into customizable widget sections with a shortcut function menu down the monitor's right-hand frame. This is one of those SUV crossovers that sits you noticeably higher than the hatchback it's based upon. And though the positioning is hardly commanding, it does give you good all-round vision, hampered only by chunky rear C-pillars, though on this top variant you won't be much bothered by that because a 360 degrees surround view camera system comes included. Time to take a seat in the rear. With the increased size of this second generation model, you'd think that improvements would have been made here, which by and large is true. The bench doesn't slide, nor does the backrest recline, but there's pretty much the same sort of leg space back here as you'd find in a more expensive lower mid-sized crossover from the next class up, like say a Nissan Qashqai or a SEAT Arona, cars that are considerably more expensive than this one. You can push your feet well under the front seats, and headroom's impressive too. With such a spacious back seat on offer, you might expect a generously sized boot too. Lift the hatch though, and it turns out that the 443 litre space provided, the same with both of the available engines, is actually 5 litres less than was offered before. Still, that's above average by class standards, 43 litres more than a Duster hybrid for instance, and you access the space via quite a low loading lip. Compared to nearly all its direct compact SUV segment rivals, this ZS Hybrid Plus is cheaper, more spacious, better equipped and much more powerful. It's more frugal than most of them too. Now, if all of this had been delivered with the cheap feeling cabin and little looks of the previous generation model, it still might not have been enough for sales success, but significant steps forward have been made in both directions. You'll still find many pricier segment rivals are more avant-garde to look at and sit in, but MG is closing the gap, creating here a small SUV you'd be unwise to ignore.